Hello lovely people, I'm Catherine and welcome to this week's Wonky Wednesday. We're going to do something a little bit different. This is by request of Jenny. In my Park Home Life episode, I think it was the last one, I showed you my Slowstitch strip that I made into a pelmet for my window blind. I don't know why I'm miming, you know what a strip is. And it had red stitching in it around holes. Now it's basically a modification on an eyelet stitch. And Jenny asked if I would show you how to do it, so I'm gonna. Now this is my journal from 2019, one of them, and I've got a little sample in here. Do you see my hand coming underneath? So that's holes, it's stitched to the page, so I can't take it out to show you. I hope you can see if I hold it there. So it's basically eyelet stitches all up against each other, but wonky shapes, so it fits the theme. And there are a couple of things to bear in mind. One is, I think it's much easier if you use a colour thread that's somewhat similar to your cloth, because then if you get little frayed bits of cloth poking through, it won't show. I'm going to show you in a contrast just for clarity, but I would suggest that you use, for my window blind, it's red thread and red cloth, and here I used a sort of beige on beige. That will make your life easier. The other thing is you need something sturdy to stitch on because you're putting a lot of stitches in, and this little piece here is 2 layers, so there's some cotton on the back. That's how it looks on the back. You see, if you're neat, you could, it's two-sided. So I've got cotton on the back and silk noil on the front, but 2 layers of cloth because I work in the hand, not in a hoop. I suppose you could do it in a hoop if you wanted to. So yeah, sturdy cloth and a thread that sort of somewhat matches your background, just until you see how you go with it. So I'll put that away, and I've got this blue background cloth which I've just dug out of a box, and this yellow bit of cloth to stitch on, so hopefully you can see clearly. And I'm going to use, in that sample I used cotton pearl, sorry, pearl cotton. I'm going to use 3 strands of embroidery floss in this dark green. Again, the thickness of your thread doesn't really matter, but the thinner your thread, the more stitching you have to do. Now you could do it one of 2 ways. I marked out an area on that little sample in the book. On my blind, the pieces in the collage were already a long thin rectangle, so I just did the eyelet stitch completely in the shape of the rectangle. So I'll draw a rectangle on here, sorry glary ruler, with a blue disappearing pen. And just, if you're doing it within a section of cloth in a collage or whatever, then you don't need to draw, you can just, fill in your whole area. But if you just want to do a little sample for practice, it's very time consuming. I will get myself going and then go away and probably sit all evening doing it and then come back, because it is very time consuming. Now you could now, if you wanted to, I'll just get this back actually, go and draw all those shapes in. Where are we? Here. If you thought it was easier to draw in, do you see they're just organic shapes? The only thing is you need to have a good 1/4 inch, don't put blue pen on it, between 1/4 and 1/2 inch cloth left between all your holes. Can you see that clearly if I put my hand underneath? You see, because otherwise you need something to hold it. You need a bit of cloth between the stitching. So if you want to go ahead and just draw those shapes, you could just go ahead and draw wiggly shapes and making sure you left the space in between. I just cut and do it as I go. I don't cut all the holes at once because that would, be fragile. You need to get the stitching in. So I haven't basted this together, that would have been handy. So I might just decide I'm going to start in this corner and put in a wiggly shape here. So I'll just get a little nick. These are the snippies, yes. So I can get the point of my scissors in. And I'll just cut just a random wiggly shape basically to get me started. I just find this easier than trying to follow a drawn line, because they don't have to be any shape in particular as long as they're somewhat random for the effect. And that you stay, you know, I'm staying maybe slightly less than 1/4 of an inch away from my border. So then my edge lines, where my little hole meets the edge, are straight, parallel to the border, but my lines on the inside of the piece are wiggly. And also I need to kind of make sure that I can fit another shape here and leave that gap. You see, I've come a bit far over, really. There's a lot to think about, but you know, just if you want to have a go, just make yourself a little sample piece, you know, see how you get on. So now, basically, I'm just going to eyelet stitch around that shape. So I'm going to come up here somewhere, about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the cut. And when I eyelet stitch, however I'm doing it, whether I'm doing little round holes or whatever, I always go round with one pass of stitches that are, you know, quite far apart to start with, about 1/8 of an inch or so, just to stabilise the edge, and don't pull them too tight. Just pull until you just feel them sit against the edge of the cloth. And for this, I try and keep the stitches somewhat the same length. It's kind of I suppose it's a reverse stained glass window effect, or I don't know what you call it. Now I learnt this 10 or 12 years ago from Caroline Bell, who's an English eco-print and textile artist. And I went and I'd been eco-printing for 2 or 3 years on my own, experimenting, and then I got to hear about her, and I went and did a 2-day, 2-part workshop with her, and my eco prints went zoom. You know, I learnt so much. That was a sound effect. They improved drastically, and then we went back in the winter, I think it was, having done the eco printing in the autumn, to stitch on, to have a couple of days or a day, can't remember exactly, doing some slow stitch on the cloths that we'd eco printed with her back in the autumn. And that was when I started that piece, which is now over my kitchen window. It only took me 12 years to finish it. And yes, it was that day that she introduced me to this way of stitching. So you see, I'm just going around the edge, just 1/8 of an inch or so away, just pushing my stitches into place with a needle if necessary, not pulling anything tight. Someone's reversing outside. I don't know if you can hear that beeping. You know that beep, beep, beep. And once I've been all the way around once, I'll go around again. You could either finish this hole, you know, go around again until it's completely filled in, or you could, and that's maybe even better actually now I come to think of it, do all the holes like this and then go back and fill them all in one go. So I'll just come back along this straight edge here. Now, if you're starting and stopping thread, you need to make sure that you stay within your stitches, basically. Thread your thread under your stitches, because there won't be much left of the cloth once you've got all your holes. But, you know, like I said, it is very time consuming, but it's very mindful to do, and it is a lovely effect. I hope you can see what I'm doing well enough with this contrasting thread and the blue pen. I would probably, if it was, you know, I was just doing it for myself, have just put a fine pencil line. I'm not a great fan of blue pen. I find it visually unpleasant, but that's just me. So I could now just leave that there and go and cut my next hole. Now that hole is somewhat stabilised. And you do need to kind of sort of plan ahead a little bit, because I don't like there to be lines, so I wouldn't want to do another hole that ended in the same place as this hole. I think if they're all interlocking it looks much better. So I probably will do a smaller hole here in this corner, and then a bigger hole that extends up further that way, if you see what I mean. So let's start with a smaller hole, make sure I don't cut my thread. So I'll make my snip, I'll just fold the fabric or pleat it and make a little snip somewhere where I think the middle of my hole will be. You need sharp pointy scissors. And then I'll go in again and make sure I leave that generous 1/4 of an inch. And I'm just eyeballing that I'm staying roughly an even amount away from that edge. And then when I get to my edge of my piece, my drawn blue line, there I'll cut straight. If you want to have a little doodle on a scrap of paper first, you know, draw yourself a box and draw these shapes in it with a pencil. That's something I used to recommend when I used to teach free motion quilting. Just draw it over and over, you know, a few different variations. Doodle, it's doodling. And then you'll get the hang of how the shapes interlock. And then go and do it on your cloth, and you'll get some kind of muscle memory effect going on. But there's no real right or wrong way to do it, as long as you just follow those guidelines that I said. I'm a bit hampered by the fact that I can't really see what I'm doing. I'm just going to bring it a bit closer to me. I hope you can still see well enough, or I hope you've got enough of an idea, but I literally can't see when it's all the way over there. So there we go. So I've got another somewhat weird little shape. I'm actually just going to round that end off a bit more. It's a little bit square. And the holes can really be as big or as small as you like. Obviously you need enough fabric to hold it together. Now I have to just think here now about the next hole, which is going to come somewhere in here. It can just curve gently into there a little bit and it'll still leave enough. Do you see what I mean? So that's fine. And it doesn't have to be super accurate. I feel like I'm frightening you all. Just get a couple of little scraps of cloth and have a play. And just see if you like it. So I'm just working my way along now over to the new hole rather than jumping, because my thread would show through somewhere. So I can just finish off the side of this one. Maybe when I get there I'll just show you drawing as an option. In case you're happier with that, because obviously if you draw a line in the wrong place and you're not happy with it, you can just wet it, or if it's pencil, if it's soft pencil, I just rub it gently with my fingers till it's all but gone. So I've got around here now. So that side there of that hole is stitched enough now, that's fine, and it's got this lovely edge to it. So now I can come under and then come out here somewhere, ready to stitch around this new hole. And as long as there's a little gap between the stitches, a little strip of the cloth showing, it doesn't have to be much, you'll get the effect. And then I'll just go and stabilise this with the stitch all the way around in exactly the same way. And then I do my next hole and so on. And that's basically all there is to it. It's just a little bit fiddly and a little bit time consuming, but if you enjoy it then the time consuming is not an issue, is it? So if I was to draw them first, I would make sure I'm in the middle of the frame. So I would just make sure I'm a good quarter of an inch away from the other hole there. Maybe go like that and like that. Make sure my line stayed organic and wibbly until I got parallel to my edge, and then draw one there. And then maybe this one wants to go, you see, as long as they just all interlock. And then maybe this one, make sure you leave, maybe I'll go up here and do this one next, so this side's finished. Maybe I'll do that one like that. And then I need to have a skinny, so I'm looking at the other lines as I'm drawing. I hope my head's not coming in, just to make sure that I stay that distance away. And then here, something like that. Do you see? So you could have a little practice drawing on a piece of paper. You know, if you've just got a sort of A4 full size of scrap paper, and you just draw if you sit for an hour and doodle and draw a few of them, they're fun to draw anyway. I just think there's something mindful about filling in all that. It's like a little stone wall or something. And then obviously once I've stitched around here and I get to here, then it's just a matter of snipping in the middle and then cutting out. And that blue pen will probably disappear all under my stitching anyway, so. And even then I wouldn't be that bothered about being accurate. That line is there to guide me, not to dictate exactly where I'm going. So then I just cut out around the line. But don't cut out all your holes at once, because the piece will be all fragile and flippy floppy and all the edges will fray and crumble. One hole at a time. And do one hole at a time, and at least get these stabilized. You can do one hole, do the stabilizing, cut another hole, do the so you've got the whole piece with this sort of first line of stabilizing stitches, and then you can go back and do all this. And that's maybe a nice way to do it then, because then once you've got to that stage where you've got all the holes like this, you can just sit and stitch instead of having to keep stopping and cutting, and you know. I'm cutting this now because just to show you. So there we go. So I'll go and sit and finish the stitching, and I'll come back and show you it when it's done. It'll be a shorter one this week, but I wanted to share it with you, and you know. So I did. I hope you like it, and it now looks nice with the blue showing through. That's another thing you can do, by the way. You can then put another cloth behind, so you can either have it as a whole, like I've got here in my book. Just depends what you want to use it for. Where you can see the, you can see the eco print paper through the holes, or if you wanted it for a window covering or something, so the light came through the holes, or if you wanted to put it in a journal cover or something like that and you didn't want to be able to see through the holes, you can just get a contrasting piece of cloth. That's not very contrasting, but you know what I mean, and then stitch it behind it. You could even, if you wanted to really fiddle, put a little scrap of different colours behind each one, but they'd have to be, very precisely cut. But yeah, fun. Okay, so I'll go and finish my stitching, and I'll come back and show you it when it's done. Where have I put it now? There it is. I'll come back and show you when it's done, okay? I'll maybe stitch a bit more with you, because I feel I'm cheating you if it's only 20 minutes long. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, I got a bit carried away, I'm afraid. I started stitching on it yesterday evening, and then my son called me, and we were having a long chat, and I was stitching away while I was chatting to him, and I meant to leave a little bit to stitch with you, but I finished it, and I've cut through a stitch there, I see, but it doesn't really matter. So I finished all the stitching, and then I put some water to get rid of my blue line around the edge, and I hope you can see what I mean. Do you see here and there's bits of yellow showing through where I probably wasn't close enough. Oh, hello, Fred. That's not really helpful, Boo. Sorry, that was him, not me. Hello. No, it's not tea time yet. Can I finish showing the lovely people my stitching instead of you? Yeah, so yeah, that's why I was saying about matching the thread. Sorry about Fred's, that's actually his bottom. Can you just move slightly or sit down or something? Fred, come and sit on my knee. Come and sit on my knee. There's a good boy. No, you don't want to sit on my knee. You want to sit on there and be a pain. Sit on my knee a minute. No, he doesn't want to sit on my knee. You don't really see him, you just see a load of cat fur blurry. Yeah, so if you match your thread to your background, then that's much, you know, all that's kind of minimised. But like I said, I did it in a contrasting colour so that you could see what I was doing. So what I think I will do, because this little piece, I'll just show you the back. You see, if you were neat with stitching your ends in, and you didn't sort of jump across, you could really make it double-sided. So what I thought I would do, as I was saying, is stitch something behind it. Now I've, you know, let's go mad and have this bit of pink. This is a bit of pink muslin or cheesecloth. Look at that. I just thought that really was really striking. So I'm going to do some stitches behind. So I'm just going to line it up somewhat so it covers the hole. And maybe put a couple of pins just to hold it. Oh, Fred. I can't see what I'm doing now. Can you? I can't work under these conditions. I've said it before. Thank you. He's gone. So I've just put a couple of pins, and I've got a single strand of floss that's kind of the colour of my, you know, my mustardy coloured cloth. And I'm just going to stitch. I think I'm going to just do invisible based, just sort of around the spaces, if that makes sense. So invisible based is a tiny stitch on the front and a bigger stitch on the back. Obviously, if you wanted it to be double-sided, you could do running stitch or something instead, but this is going in my Wonky journal. So I just work my way around just to hold it. And this was what I did with my curtain, my pelmet thingy bob, because it was made, when I originally stitched it, it was holes right through. But because I was going to stitch it to that polywolly netty thing that was hanging here when I moved in, didn't look that great through the red holes, so I stitched some dark coloured eco print behind it. I'm just going to work my way around somewhat. Yes, it's now quite late in the day. It's Tuesday, although you'll be watching this on Wednesday. But I've been out all day and I've had a lovely day, and I must say, when I woke up this morning, I didn't feel very good. I'm physically okay, you know, the cold thing had more or less gone, but just a bit flat. And probably I would have just stayed home and felt flat all day, only I wanted to go to an exhibition, and for Friday's episode of Park Home Life, and it was my last chance to go, really. So it was good that I had to go, you know, well, I had to go. It was in my schedule for Park Home Life, so I made myself go. And it perked me up no end. So you'll see that on Friday if you watch Park Home Life. And it was where the exhibition was near a lovely woodland, and so we went for a walk. And that will be on Friday in Park Home Life as well. So yeah, it was good that I had to go out, like I said, because I feel much better now. It's really lifted my mood. And that's also now why I'm doing this much later than I normally would. This cheesecloth is a bit tricksy, but I shall stitch it into submission. So do you see, I'm just working my way. I don't think I have to go around everything. I'm just going around where I think I need to. Probably I needed to go up there. I'm going to turn around and do a little, just go backwards. I really like these three colours together, I have to say. It's got kind of a Indian feel to it, I think, you know, like Indian embroidery. I can't see where I've been now. I need to go up there as well. And that sound, I don't know if you can hear, but that's Stella licking herself because she's just had a bath. If you watch Friday. You have to now, don't you? If you don't already. You'll see why. But yeah, it was a nice day. It wasn't too, it was a little bit cold, but not too cold, and it was dry, and it was a bit cloudy, but it was one of those gentle, soft days. So I'm so glad I went out. Where am I now? I've stitched myself into up a blind alley. I'll do a little back stitch and stop and start. Because this is quite sheer, the pink, I don't know if I jumped across the holes if the thread might show through. So, right, where shall I go now? Try and plan a route. I'll start there. Yeah, it's been a week of holes, hasn't it? If you watch the Monday project, you'll see that I had to stitch several holes. So it's quite appropriate that today's is also holes. I'm going to work my way through here, which wasn't planned, obviously. Well, I couldn't have planned Monday with the pulling out the holes. I already knew I was going to do this. It's just completely random, Monday was. We look for patterns, don't we? But there aren't any really, are there? Right, I shall just work my way around here. This bit of yellow, I don't know, can't remember if I mentioned it because it was so long ago for me, was dyed with brown onion skins with an alum mordant. If you've watched any of my eco dyeing videos, you'll have heard me talk about mordanting. But it's quite old. It was dyed quite a long time ago. I actually salvaged it out of another little experimental bit of work that I'd done some stitches on just to practice. If I had to really guess, I'd say it's maybe 6 or 7 years old. And you see that properly mordanted, it doesn't fade at all. It's quite bright yellow. Well, it doesn't fade any more than a commercially dyed bit of cloth. Natural dyes don't if you do it, you know, properly. No more than commercial dyes. That's what I'm trying to say. To keep looking on the back because it's such a good match. I need to go down there a bit. Such a good match, I can't see my invisible baste. And it's turned into, I think, quite a nice little piece. And it's, just checking, that's alright. And it's, yeah, it's a bit different to what we usually do on a Wednesday, but it's wonky. It's wonky holes. And Jenny in particular had asked for it, but a few of you had mentioned it when you saw my blind, so I'm happy to share it with you. So here's my journal. Now this journal won't be full this year with the Wonky Wednesdays, and I don't know if you've made a journal if yours is also not full, but I shall carry on adding little pieces to it. It's just nice to have these little journals that are kind of experimental pieces, rather than having all the stuff, all the little bits and bobs, you know, stuck in a box. I haven't actually stitched that in yet. I often go back and look through my journals. That looks nice there against the rust print. You know, and going back years, you look through them and you see, you get ideas. You almost forget what you've done, or I do. You see something somewhere, or you think of something, and so I try it in a little experimental piece if it's something new. And well, that's the end of the signature. That means there's one more signature left. So I filled, how many signatures did I put in this book? I don't even remember. 3 in total, I think. So I've done 2/3 of my book. Yeah, so did I finish my thought? Yeah, that's another, I mean, stitch journals are a thing in and of themselves, but also if you just have a journal on the go, when you make these little experimental pieces, you can just add them to your journal. And because I haven't written anything in this or dated it or anything, I could have done, but I just didn't. I just prefer that to, you know, having a box full of all these bits, although I do have that as well, to be honest. And then you can go back and, you know, if you're stuck for inspiration, or just one rainy afternoon, just think, oh, I'll have a look through my old stitch journals. I often do that. And, you know, you can be kind of inspired by your past self if you like. Whoops. And it's also a little art object in itself, I think. And if you want to make notes of what you did, or, you know, the date or whatever, then of course you can. I sometimes do, not always. Okay, so there we go. Just finish off with a little back stitch. Just leave that hanging, it's not doing no harm. So yeah, so I hope you have a go. It's kind of looks more complicated than it is. Just bear in mind those few little guidelines that I gave you, and I'm sure you'll be fine. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Bye bye.